Hey guys, Brandon Lewis here. Make sure that you mark your calendar. We are going to have a Protect Tennessee's Borders rally in Nashville on March 20th. It's going to be near the Capitol. Stay tuned for more details, but do pencil us in. You know, for the past 3-4 years, I've been running this publication, and guess what? Something weird is happening, and that is that the GOP doesn't seem to listen to anything that conservative primary voters want as it relates to illegal immigration. And so we're going to try to bring together some folks that are worried about the rampant illegal immigration problems that we have here in Tennessee and our leadership's refusal to do anything about it. So do mark your calendar. Again, Protect Tennessee's Borders rally. It will be March 20th in or around the Cordell Hall building. We've got stories. 99% disagree with TNGOP leadership's stance on illegal immigration. Tennessee election bill written to protect presidency from the invasion at the border withdrawn due to false accusations of being anti-Trump. Bill to protect prohibit hospitals from restricting in-person visits passes the Tennessee Senate. State conceals information surrounding governor's $1.6 billion franchise tax reform. Bill enabling violent Tennessee offenders who murder children to escape accountability moved forward. Bill threatens transparency in Tennessee Department of Tourism. Tennessee Senate votes to protect religious freedom for clergy and more. Guys, if you have not subscribed to our newsletter, do text the word news, N-E-W-S, to 205-5600. 423-205-5600, and do follow us here on Twitter. Hit the old follow button, Gab Getter Truth, MeWe, etc. We will be there. And guys, if you want a free Stop Illegal Immigration in Tennessee bumper sticker, subscribe to our newsletter and you'll see a little ad for that. We'd be happy to mail one of those to you so we can continue to build awareness around this issue. Headline, 99% disagree with Tennessee GOP leadership stance on illegal immigration, and a Protect Tennessee Borders rally is coming soon. Survey results show that 99% of respondents disagree with the TNGOP's leadership stance that illegal immigration is largely a federal issue, answering that the GOP state lawmakers should pass laws to stop or discourage it. Less than 1% of respondents answered with, I trust the federal government to handle it. The sample size used for this poll was 1,659 Tennessee residents. 77% described themselves as conservative Republicans, 11% as independents, 6% as libertarians, 5% as moderate Republicans, and less than 1% as moderate or liberal Democrats. About 72% of respondents were 4 of 4 primary voters, and 97% of respondents said they're going to be voting in the upcoming Tennessee primaries, and you should too. And I'm telling you, there are some exceptions. We have some conservatives up there in the Tennessee legislature. They are few and far between. But for the most part, if you see a challenger on the ballot in a GOP primary, unless you've got a real conservative person, you probably need to vote for the challenger, whoever it is. So we got some bench warmers up there and a whole lot of folks that are really just corporate indentured servants. Moving right along, when asked to rate their concern about illegal immigration in Tennessee on a scale of 1 to 100, with 1 being not worried and 100 being extremely worried, respondents gave an average rating of 96. 96 out of 100. Survey results show that 99% of respondents believe that illegal immigrants should not be receiving taxpayer-funded benefits like welfare, housing, etc. 98% of respondents were in support of the Tennessee legislature passing bills to stop taxpayer funding of education, and 99% said they were all for it, penalizing the companies that are mass transporting illegal aliens underneath the nose of Republican leadership as they do nothing and wring their hands and go down to the border for photo opportunities and write sternly worded letters to the federal government as if that's done anything in the past. Respondents were asked to rank the performance of GOP-controlled legislature and Governor Bill Lee on the issue of illegal immigration from 1 to 100, 1 being extremely disappointed and 100 being extremely pleased. Here's the takeaway. Tennessee Republican lawmakers received a score of 19. 19 out of 100. That would be a failing grade. And Governor Lee, you got a real big score of 23. Whoo! Next story. Tennessee election bill written to protect presidency from the invasion at the border withdrawn due to false accusations of being anti-Trump. A bill that was carried in the general session was withdrawn this week due to bill language being misinterpreted and subsequent negative social media and email campaign accusing the bill authors of establishing statuses with the goals of keeping Trump off the ballot. And this was brought by Bud Halsey, and Senator Frank Nicely. It was later withdrawn. Both of these gentlemen, to my knowledge, are Trump supporters, so that it really is kind of all theater of the mind. I can't remember the lady who tried to make a bunch of hay out of this. But nonetheless, the bill enumerates the following directions for electors effective immediately upon the adoption of this act. Presidential electors for the state are prohibited from casting a vote for any presidential or vice presidential candidate whose eligibility for office is in question, etc. And that's not aimed at Trump. Trump's already been president. But for folks that would not meet the qualifications, should they receive a vote, the electors in Tennessee, if it doesn't coincide with the Constitution, could not vote for him. So because it was just kind of confusing to people, they withdrew it. Probably a good idea. All right, guys, do tune in to Mill Creek View, Tennessee podcast. My friend Steve Abramowitz does a great job. He recently had Adelia and Kelly Jackson on there. He also had interviewed country music singer and songwriter John Rich and the legendary Green Leewood, who I had an opportunity to interview back when I did interviews. And if you want to know what's going on in Tennessee politics, they ain't many podcasts to listen to. And Mill Creek View is a good one. Make sure you type in Mill Creek View, Tennessee, and you can also check him out on Rumble. So, go help my buddy Steve. Next story. Bill to prohibit hospitals from restricting in-person visits passes the Tennessee Senate. I know everybody else has moved on from COVID, and I could move on too if the same SOBs that did everything to us weren't still in power in Tennessee, but they are. We had people in our state die without ever seeing their loved ones whose husbands, fathers, mothers were dying in the hospitals, and these evil corporate health conglomerates kept people from having the human dignity that you can only get once in your life, and that's when you're on your deathbed. I don't trust these institutions, and I'm so glad that we've got somebody standing up to make sure that this never has to happen again. A bill that would prohibit hospitals from restricting in-person visitations of patients passed in the Tennessee Senate this week. 29 senators voted for Senator Mark Pody's bill. All the Republican senators and 2 Democrats and 3 Democrats voted no. Senate Bill 1641 would guarantee that someone with the power of attorney over a patient has the right to at least 1 visit a day for at least an hour for the entirety of the patient's stay. Sponsor of the bill, Senator Mark Pody, verified that such a person would have this right even during a declared emergency. Well, we saw how Bill Lee loved to abuse a declared emergency and how the legislative branch didn't give a rip about taking on their responsibilities as a separate form of government during the pandemic. These are all big issues that need to be discussed. A third, but I am disgusted about it, but it does need to be discussed. A third and final amendment that made the bill was added before the vote, which stipulates that those making visits must, quote, submit to a non-invasive health and safety protocols put in place by hospitals. Pody said that he had worked with the Tennessee Hospital Association. Boy, I bet you feel dirty when you come out of that meeting. On the amendment, which does not force anyone visiting to get a vaccine in order to be allowed inside the hospital, but may require them to get masked or wear a gown or possibly spend the visit on the other side of a piece of glass. Who knows? It's just a money game for these people. There's no humanity in it. It's just a body factory. Critics say that the Senate-passed amendment bill is watered down to the point where it still leaves the healthcare system in charge of your loved one's right. But you know what? It's still a step in the right direction. House version of the bill, HB 1883, sponsored by Representative Kip Cackley, is yet to make any real headway. Let's hope that people in the House do the right thing. 2 years in a row, Representative Todd Warner introduced a more comprehensive bill guaranteeing family and patients' bill of rights, but was met with opposition by fellow members in the GOP and was killed because if you look at their campaign contributions, the health lobby, whether it's vaccine companies or large corporate conglomerates, they're always looking for some method to control your life, to push profitable treatments down on you, to restrict your medical freedom. That's simply where we are. Next story, state conceals information surrounding Governor Bill Lee's $1.6 billion franchise tax reform. If we're going to be giving people back $1.6 billion, don't we need to know who it is and why? Don't we need to know who it is and why? State officials are refusing to provide information regarding Governor Bill Lee's decision to include a $1.6 billion tax cut and refund for certain businesses. According to Finance Commissioner Jim Bryson, Governor Lee included the tax refunds plus an additional $400 million in recurring franchise tax reform in the 2025 budget request because of 80 companies who have requested franchise tax refunds from the state. However, officials will not release the names of these companies. They also will not disclose whether other possible plans for reform were considered before the budget request. Attorney General Jonathan Skrmetti says that his office cannot provide detailed information because of attorney-client privilege. He did confirm to the House Ways Means Finance Committee that the state was not currently the subject of any lawsuits due to the franchise tax, but neither he nor the Department of Revenue would give any details about the potential legal risk to the state. Republican leadership wonders why people don't trust them. You are doing the people's business. When you do the people's business, you ought to do it with an open door in a very transparent fashion. Revenue Commissioner Dave Garriango said that the change was imperative and that failing to make the change would be extremely costly to Tennessee taxpayers. Great. Well, tell us all about it. Let's fill us in on the details. We're not just going to take your word for it. Why? Because you have lied to us in the past. Bryson told legislators it would probably take several years for the whole situation to be resolved, and there can be additional expenditures from the state in attorney's fees and another 12% interest on refunds. Bryson said when we talked to the AG's office that this was the remedy, was actually the best remedy, but we don't know anything. Guys, don't keep us in the dark. That's why we don't trust you. Next story. Bill enabling violent Tennessee offenders who murdered kids to escape accountability, forwarded by voice vote called by Chair Kelly Kessling. He's had a lot of bad votes in his career. If he's got a primary opponent, you could probably go ahead and vote for them, whoever it is. This week, a bill that would keep the autopsy reports of children killed at the hands of violent crime offenders from being public record moved through the Tennessee State House and Government Committee by voice vote led by Chair Kelly Kessling. Transparency. You hear transparency come out of leadership's mouth every other sentence, but buddy, they don't provide much of it. It's pretty corrupt. It looks and smells corrupt. I mean, I thought that truth was as sharp as a double-edged sword. Why would you want to bury it? For the vote in the House State Government Committee, Chair Kelly Kessling chose to use a voice vote, which is a cowardly way of hiding your votes and the members' votes on certain things. So when they're running for re-election, you can't see all the awful votes that they voted for. House State Government members and said, however, no member requested to have their votes counted. So you have to think that all of these people voted for this. Rush Bricken, Ed Butler, Michelle Carringer, Kirk Haston, John Holtzclaw, Chris Kurt, Curtis Johnson, Tom Leatherwood, Mary Littleton, Jake McCallman, Dennis Powers, Iris Rutter, and Brian Terry, and Democrats Jesse Chisholm, Vincent Dixie, Darren Jernigan, Larry Miller, Justin Pearson, and Jason Powell. Even though a voice vote was taken and watching and listening to the video, no nays were audible. As the law currently reads, all reports of the county medical examiners, toxicology reports, and autopsy reports are public documents. Without exception, House Bill 1695 seeks to add exceptions to the law that could shield violent perpetrators who have murdered children from receiving a just consequence. Deborah Fisher, executive director of the Tennessee Coalition for Open Government, said, quote, "The bill assumes that police and prosecutors always get it right. They don't. They're part of the government. The government, in many cases, rarely gets it right. Every couple of years, a story emerges which a local journalist has used an autopsy, often working with frustrated extended family members and not necessarily the parent, to shine lights on both mistakes and attempted cover-ups," Fisher said. HB 1695 will now move to the House Government Operations Committee. All right, guys, listen. Woo! We are the state's only conservative news alternative. We're the only one. You can't give us enough money to write a puff piece on you. I am sorry. We cannot be bought. We cannot be purchased. We exclusively and only do one thing. We advocate for what we know based upon data, survey data, that Republican primary voters actually want in Tennessee. Very simple, very straightforward. We ask our subscribers what they want, and then we advocate for it in our editorial content. And luckily for Brandon Lewis, that tends to line up almost all the time. And if you want us to continue to bring you the news, I kid you not, these freaking articles that we write and the subjects we cover, ain't nobody else covering it. It doesn't matter how big of a deal it is. The corporate media in Tennessee, which is about 96% Democrats, They ain't gonna cover this stuff. We're the lone voice of truth in the volunteer state. If you would go to TennesseeConservativeNews.com and hit that support button, if you give any amount, we will send you this Don't California My Tennessee bumper sticker. We'll also send you this Stop Feeding the Rhinos bumper sticker. And we will send you this directory of all your recalcitrant GOP state reps and state senators who refuse to do the will of the people. And if you give $50 or more, you will get this proud Tennessee conservative tumbler. It is so good. It's just touching it, just touching it, or maybe even petting it will lower your blood pressure, according to many studies that have yet to be conducted. And also you will notice inside here that you will find a koozie. Everybody needs a koozie. Hey, you put that thing in your back pocket, stick it in your purse. You're going to need this thing to keep your beverages cold or hot. And we promise that it can also be used if you're out there and if the GOP decides to put billboards up again that say, "Face it, masks work," you can wear this thing around on your face just in case Bill Lee makes you put one on. All right, guys, let's move on. Let's move on to the next story here. Enough shenanigans. All right. Bill threatens transparency in Tennessee Department of Tourist Development. You see a common theme in today's stories? Let's cover stuff up. Let's not let people know what's actually going on. Recently proposed legislation would allow the Tennessee Department of Tourism Development to keep records hidden from the public at the discretion of the Attorney General and the Tourism Commissioner. What could go wrong? House Bill 1692, sponsored by poster boy William Let's Let Illegal Immigrants Be Police Officers Lambert, would allow those records to be exempt from public record laws if the information contained in them was considered sensitive, which is basically anything a bureaucrat doesn't want to scrape up and give to the public. Senate bill carried by Jack Johnson, king of transparency, right? A similar law was passed in 1988 for the Department of Economic and Community Development, allowing that department to keep records secret for 5 years. Corporate handouts. According to Lambert, the legislation comes at the request of the Department of Bill Lee's administration. Why do you want to cover stuff up? What's the purpose in covering this stuff up? Jack? William? Can you tell your constituents? Somebody email Jack Johnson. Somebody email Lambert and just ask, hey, why are we trying to cover this up from public view? Why? Potential clients would aid Lee in creating jobs and greater opportunity in Tennessee or milking us for more billions of dollars in corporate welfare. Deborah Fisher, Executive Director of Tennessee Coalition for Open Government, said it's just a very broad definition, very subjective, based on what the commissioner feels is sensitive. If that's what they want to keep confidential, developing contracts, then all they would have to do is write that as an exemption. Makes sense. All right, good news. We've got some good news between Mark Pody's bill and this one. A bill that protects religious freedom for Tennessee clergy members finally passed a vote in the full Senate. In his explanation of Senate Bill 0596, our good friend Senator Mark Pody noted that the legislation simply added 10 words to the already existing code by stating that a person is not required to solemnize a marriage if the person objects to doing so based on religious beliefs or conscience. Makes perfect sense. If you don't, you go down to the temple of Satan and get married. If you've got some weird proclivity, I'm sure somebody ordained in the Episcopal Church, or probably unfortunately, probably the mainline Methodist Church today, or so it seems, will probably marry you. But there's going to be some people that still read the scriptures and cannot marry a man and a man or a woman and a woman in the sight of God. They could not do that, not in good conscience, or a man and a pig or a tree or wherever we're headed here, a toaster oven. We don't know. The path is very murky. The legislation passed the House in March 2023, but the Senate bill was deferred to the Judiciary Committee in January 23rd of this year. After receiving the signatures in the House Senate speakers, the bill was sent to the governor, Lee, for action if signed. No law will go into effect immediately. That's it, folks. Boy, that was quick. Typically, I'm a lot slower than that. But I got to get out of here. What's going on this weekend? Because I know that is what you are concerned about. Well, let me tell you. I should have left here about 4 hours ago, maybe 5. My family has already left me to go to the Blue Ridge Mountains. We got a beautiful view because my wife has sent me pictures of it. And so I'm going to hang out with my 2 lovely daughters and my wife in this cabin, along with my sister-in-law, hey, and my darling niece. Often when I travel, it is little old BL and a whole bunch of women, almost all the time. And that's how I live at the house here. And that's why I have to chop wood and light fires and invite friends over here the male description for a brewski from time to time, so I can get my my carousing and my terrible humor out of me from time to time. I'm doing that, and then I've just got work, man. It's that time of year. I'm just slaving away. I'm working through the pile. I'm working through the pile. I'm about 2/3 of the way through my busy season in my paying business. Many of you know that I'm a consultant for service businesses. And of course, when the legislature is in session, we try to make things happen. And sometimes that's really difficult because they don't really want to make anything happen unless the corporations have asked them to do it. Guys, listen, mark your calendar right now, March 20th, Nashville. I've never asked our subscribers, not once, not ever, to go with me to any sort of rally or protest or anything like that. But when we survey our subscribers and they say illegal immigration is the #1 issue they're concerned about at the state level, and when I look at the legislation in the hopper and I don't see any support from Bill Lee, no bills being pushed by Cameron Sexton, nothing with any significant support from Randy McNally, nothing that's going to make any difference, I'm like, the best thing we can do is go call attention to this. So if you're one of those obscure subscribers of mine that happens to know somebody that's in the national spotlight, if you could send me an email and copy them and tell them about this event once we get the details out there, that would be great. I think we may have some big guests coming up, maybe some people that might be running for governor. Who knows? Just to call attention to this, that we need something to be done at the state level to make our state inhospitable. We have to protect Tennessee's borders. Love you, mean it. Hope you have a great weekend. I'll see you next time. Brandon Lewis here with a 10 Con Big 7 Weekend Update, signing off.